Last week, I was on vacation with my girlfriend at the Rhine, and we saw this sign. And it was completely fascinating to me. We saw it in a few places, but this one was the least vandalized. So, let's unpack what's going on here. First of all, what does this sign want to tell us? In summer, there's a lot of people bathing at the Rhine, including a lot of children. And the water starts out quite shallow, but then can suddenly drop way deeper where you can no longer stand. And in those places the current is also much stronger, which is very dangerous. Now this is far from the worst sign I've seen. In fact, I was able to understand it pretty quickly, especially given the location. But it's not great. Now I don't want to bash this thing or the people who made it, because making a good sign is really hard, and making one that is simple and easy to read takes a lot of time. Time this designer probably didn't have, on account of people actually drowning. But this sign is a great example of what happens when you rush towards a deadline. When the design just doesn't quite work, so you keep adding more and more patches, hoping it will fix it somehow, but it just keeps creating a bigger and bigger mess. Now me, when I try to improve a design, I usually try to change the things that don't work or take things away. But this can be especially hard to do if you work with clients that prioritize quantity over quality. So the saying may be one bad apple spoils the bunch, but your boss will probably tell you you can't just throw away an apple you paid good money for. The more apples, the better. So yeah, I empathize with whoever made this, and I'm so sorry. Alright, now that I said sorry, everything I say from here on out is excusable. So let's rip this apart. First, let's talk about style. Now this is a bit inconsistent. We see solid shapes, we see patterns, and we see dark and white lines, and almost all of them using a different thickness. Now inconsistency doesn't have to be bad. If you have one word in a sentence that uses a different style, you know that word is important. But here everything is different from each other. A sentence where every word uses a different style just doesn't draw attention towards anything. It's just really hard to read. So let's make these lines the same thickness. Now what about this man? This buff dude seems to have dislocated both his shoulders when he yanked up his thin little arms. Also, his speedo looks a bit uncomfortable. Now the problem here is the level of abstraction. There is a reason this guy is so very popular in science. This guy is brilliant. This thing has neither ethnicity or age or gender standing by itself. All this is saying is, I'm a being with 2 arms and legs and a head. Are you one such being? Then this sign is for you. Of course, this symbol can be like black or an adult or a man when put in context. At that point, we automatically lose a level of abstraction. For example, if we put these two next to each other, the symbol is no longer just saying, I have 2 arms and legs. It's now also saying, I don't have a skirt. And if you have a skirt, this sign is not for you. And that's why I think this symbol isn't nearly as brilliant as the first one, because in 1,000 years we probably still have 2 arms and 2 legs and a head, or mostly. But the days when all women wore skirts and all the men wore trousers, I mean, those are pretty short, and I think they're behind us, right? So, when you get less abstract, you become more specific and more narrow, and your sign isn't as broadly usable. At the same time, you want your sign to be understood, of course. And this wouldn't work to distinguish between the men's and ladies' bathrooms, so the minimal needed amount of specificity is added to make the sign readable, but still as broad as possible. Now let's look at our poor beach boy again. This is not a drowning person, this is a drowning man. In my opinion, that's an unnecessary amount of specificity. On top of that, it makes for a worse look. Since we're seeing anatomical features like a thinner waist and broad shoulders, we'd expect these shoulders to behave in a more natural anatomic way. Now we could maybe try to fix that like this. Side note. It's possible that this was made a man specifically, because otherwise the beefy bros wouldn't have taken it seriously. Now that I think about it, it's probably true. Now we're going to get to the gravel and the water, but let's take a moment to consider this huge exclamation mark at the top. Why is this here? What does it say? Well, it's trying to say, important, warning, watch out. Oh dear, if only there was an officially established visual way of saying that. Oh wait, there is. It's the huge ass red border in the shape of a triangle. If you have to write on your warning sign that it's a warning, your design might not be working. So let's just get rid of that. Back to the water and gravel. Why gravel? Yes, that's what the Rhine riverbank mostly consists of. But that's also completely irrelevant information. Also, the amount of detail is just much higher than the rest of the sign. But the pattern is here because otherwise you might not understand what this shape is. So like this, just looks like sky. Okay, let's try to fix that. Let's remove the lines in the water. I don't think they really add anything. And the lines on top of the dude, I guess, are meant to tell us that he's inside the water and not on top of it. But maybe we'll find a better solution to say this, and let's remove them for now. If we take a break here, we might notice that things seem to be getting worse. But that's usually the case when optimizing almost anything. If you remove the patches, you will reveal the things that those patches were covering up. Now I'm hoping that if we fix the base design, we will no longer need those patches. Now this looks like a man floating away from the shore. But if we just make the right shape black, we're underwater again. However, black on blue is pretty hard to see, especially from far away or at night. And I don't really want to make it brighter because dark blue is kind of the standard for these kinds of signs, and I don't really want to break that pattern. So I think there might not be a way around adding an outline here. Now we have something that has a consistent style and uses a minimal number of elements. And I'm not happy with it though. Because in terms of sending a clear message, I think we might actually be doing worse than the original at this point. Now I have tried to come up with a better sign, and here's what I did. First, I wanted a different guy, something more generic like that. Problem is, this guy looked like he was going, yay! Which is not really the emotion I was going for. Also, it looked like he was just kind of dropped into the water instead of drowning. Now, tilting him the other way made him seem less deliberate and more like he fell off the ledge. And then making his pose kind of asymmetrical made it look more like he's struggling. And now that he was almost completely submerged, I could remove the black outline. And I was getting closer to what I wanted, but it was really lacking a sense of urgency. I was almost tempted to bring back the exclamation mark. But no, I needed something different. So in graphic design, there is nothing more calm and more stable than a straight horizontal line. So that one had to go. Instead, I made the water wavy. Now I felt like I had something simple that worked. And this is the point where you can start adding stuff again and do some fine tuning. So all I did here was add some bubbles to more clearly illustrate what's happening to this person. And this is where I called it a day. Now that's the best I could do in a few hours, and I tried many variations that didn't work. One could easily spend days improving this, showing it to different people, looking at it from far away, and come up with something even more simplified, more understandable, and better. Now, trying to improve upon this design also made me realize all the way in which the original design wasn't actually that bad. So the details were all pretty rough, but I think the basic composition worked much better than anything else I had tried to come up with. But what I'm hoping to show with this example is, if you have the time, try to make sure your basic design works before adding more stuff on top. Now, if you try this yourself, you might come up with your own design and it might be better than mine. But if you do so, don't post it because that will make me sad.